For centuries, human conflict has escalated across physical geography: land, sea, air, and space. Eventually, the battle lines moved to the invisible infrastructure of the cyber realm. But as digital networks become harder to compromise, modern state intelligence has moved toward a far more intimate, internal target. Military theorists call it the sixth domain. This is a battle space where physical territory and data centers are irrelevant. The objective is the direct manipulation of human consciousness, targeting the mechanism by which we perceive reality itself. Inside Russia's GRU, a highly classified psychological warfare unit has operationalized a technology known as quantum echo. It functions as a quantum phone, establishing a direct, untraceable communication link straight into the neural pathways of a target. This animated diagram of a human brain illustrates the weapon's mechanics. By remotely monitoring heart rates and tracking REM sleep, operators inject precisely calibrated phantom noises and whispered threats. It is a bioluminescent digital signal that overwrites organic memory without leaving physical evidence. When an assault originates inside your own skull, the tactical weight shifts to isolation. You are under constant siege, yet you have no physical data to prove the attack is actually happening. Alexei Ivanov arrived in the US as a toddler, eventually building a successful life as a financial algorithm developer. He is a man of dualities, a Chuvash American who relies on a deeply rooted Christian faith and a commitment to his young son living in Russia. But the GRU identifies his history of depression as a structural weakness they can exploit. The attack was triggered by a mundane action. Alexei fooled a track by Oxymiron, a Russian artist designated a foreign agent, to a friend. That single digital footprint activated the weapons program, marking Alexei as a priority subject for recruitment or elimination. The invisible siege began with deafening phantom noises and relentless 7-day cycles of forced insomnia. The GRU weaponized his physical environment. Electronic locks jammed, lights flickered, and charging cables failed, turning his own home into a sensory prison. Alexei meticulously compiled his data and approached U.S. intelligence agencies to report a profound security threat. They looked at his sleep-deprived state, reviewed his history of depression, and closed their doors, labeling his testimony a textbook schizophrenic breakdown. This institutional dismissal completes the attack. By misdiagnosing a state-level cognitive weapon as a standard mental illness, psychiatric institutions unknowingly hold the target still while the enemy continues the assault. Involuntarily committed and heavily sedated, Alexei hit his lowest point. He was isolated in a psychiatric ward, stripped of his phone and his credibility, struggling to trust his own cognitive processing. Then, a microscopic error surfaced. This audio waveform visualizes a whisper Alexei heard 14,000 times. Notice the standard native pronunciation on the left. Now compare it to the injected whisper on the right. The audio stress incorrectly lands on the second syllable, everywhere. This phonetic data identifies the voice as a synthetic construct operated by a non-native speaker. The stress pattern is a specific Russian phonological transfer. Alexei realized he wasn't experiencing an internal hallucination. He was listening to a piece of faulty Russian engineering. This single data point collapses the psychological operation. The realization replaced his paralyzing fear with strategic clarity. Alexei stopped being a patient and became a combatant on a battlefield he finally understood. He began deconstructing the GRU's methodology. They used REM cycle prompts to weaponize his heritage, flooding his mind with manufactured nostalgia and reawakening the Russian language he had forgotten as a child. Alexei responded by building a cognitive firewall. He used the Russian language as a tool to monitor his attacker's syntax. When a foreign impulse appeared, he cognitively isolated it and tagged it as injected malware, sorting his thoughts from the GRU's code in real time. Instead of fleeing the connection, he used his own mind as a honeypot. He intentionally remained connected to the quantum device to study his attackers, mapping their shift patterns and the technological limitations of the ecosystem. He then launched a counteroffensive. Alexei fed truth viruses back through the quantum link, sending verifiable geopolitical facts into the minds of the GRU operators to disrupt their own ideological conditioning. Alexei successfully patched the exploit by applying system architecture logic to his own neural pathways. He transformed a state-level zero-day exploit into a two-way window for intelligence gathering. The GRU pushed to the limits of the technology, launching hyper-realistic dream warfare. They subjected Alexei to continuous, staged deaths in his sleep, attempting to drive him toward a final choice: recruitment or suicide. The operators attempted to hardwire intense nationalist loyalty into his subconscious. They designed the prompts to force an absolute pledge of allegiance to the Russian state. The weapon failed because it hit the irreducible angers established in Alexei's pre-war life, his responsibility to his young son, and a Christian faith that draws a hard line at self-destruction. These moral boundaries formed a floor that no amount of engineered terror could penetrate. This resilience proves that even a state-level cognitive weapon cannot overwrite a mind that has already confronted its own darkness and decided on a moral level that it must survive. The sustained quantum bombardment resulted in an unintended side effect. As his neurons adapted to the connection, Alexei's consciousness began to expand, allowing him to visualize branching, cosmic-scale timelines of humanity's possible futures. He channeled these visions and his months of gathered intelligence into a final counterweapon. He wrote a meticulously documented screenplay, exposing the mechanics, limitations, and operational techniques of the entire GRU program. The hunters became the confined. For failing to break a single civilian target, the elite GRU team was permanently trapped within the aquarium, a gray, mirror-glassed facility from which operatives exit only through death. Alexei survived by becoming the Oduvanchik, the dandelion seed, a singular consciousness drifting through a hostile, glitching digital storm, yet remaining perfectly, stubbornly intact. In an era of cognitive warfare, the human mind remains the ultimate bottleneck. Advanced weapons may penetrate the consciousness, but they ultimately break against an individual who chooses truth over survival.